Are you listening? Damn.
We're back with the Business of Influence podcast with me, Leroy Mark. And somewhere in the world, you see Tammy just meandering about. It's because she's out there getting fantastic guests to chat to you and me about the business of influence. And one such guest is the amazing Dr. Alistair Mokoena. He says his new title is being a man of the people, doing the good work and a proud rodent because he went to Rhodes University for his LLB. Dr. Mokoena, nice to have you. I must declare, I'm a Vitsi, so we already have a bit of a impasse between us. Can we put it aside for the duration of the conversation?
That's fine. Good to see you, Leroy. I have huge respect for Vetis.
Oh, thank you very much. You are too kind, and I'll pay you very handsomely for that comment. You were the country director at Google up until 4 months ago. I love the story of how you've come into retirement at such a very young age. Please share with us, why would you retire at such a young age when you're at your prime, as some would say?
You know, I think especially as marketers, we like, the typical cobbler's son's story where you don't have shoes, but your parent is a cobbler. Marketers tend to neglect their own personal brands.
Yes.
They also tend to neglect managing their careers as a brand. So I was quite fortunate to have the foresight when I started my career 27 years ago at Unilever, that I want to spend the first half of my career in corporate, second half as an entrepreneur, as a philanthropist, as a change maker. And I was very conscious that freedom to do all of those things was important to me. But freedom comes with a responsibility to have a full tank.
Yes.
And I needed to build the skills, acquire competence, gain a reputation of somebody, who has the credibility to do what they promised that they can do in society. Also grow and learn. It was important for my frontal cortex to also develop so that I can discern right from wrong. So I spent 27 years in corporate, had the most amazing career. But the last 15 years into my career, I started working towards a transition plan.
Okay.
That's how long it takes, right? It takes years and
decade
years
and a
and
half.
years to get to number one. Yeah, so I spent a decade and a half volunteering as a guest lecturer at universities. And the various deans would encourage me to go, they would say, you're driving without a driver's license. Go get a learner's. A learner's was a master's, like
Yes.
an MBA. And then they're like, now that you have a learner's, you need a license. It was incremental. And then I had to go and get a PhD because I was teaching and I was getting, more deeply embedded into academia. But I was also very conscious of the need for a bridge between academia and corporate.
Yes.
So that, corporate has constant access to research because we must be students of life. But also, academia can benefit from pragmatic value of being at the coalface, at the forefront of commerce. So living in both worlds for me has been very, very fulfilling. And I realized that the answers that we look for in corporate lie in research.
Oh, okay.
So even now, I'm doing my second doctorate because there are answers that I want to, there are questions that I want answers to.
unearth.
My firm belief is constantly polish your skills around asking the right questions. Forget about answers. Focus on asking, because questions reveal. Questions empower other people to bring ideas. Questions create community. If you're known as Leroy, Mr. Answer, nobody, will want to surround.
No one wants to hang out with you.
Nobody wants to hang out. But also, you will create dependence around you, as opposed to developing future leaders. And then I think for me, the ultimate mark of a good leader is giving out fishing rods and teaching people to fish through questions.
And I think one of the major things I've observed in your career, as illustrious as it is also just how nuanced it is. It is very seldom that you look at someone's CV and you can feel the nuance in it, very deliberate, very intentional about what they've sought out to do in the world and also what they want to be their contribution to whatever the conversation is. And for me, it's very interesting because we sit now with you 2 months into this new, your active retirement, I'll call it that, where you're retired, but you're busy. And you spent a significant amount of your life working at Google, right? Which is a massive corporation. I mean, who do you talk to about innovation if not Google? They are Silicon Valley, and you're the country director. But I'm interested also because you started your career at Unilever, and Unilever has been seen, like SAB, as the breeding ground for good marketers. In that seat today, I've had 2 people who had been at Unilever at some point in their career. Chat to me how you marry these 2 places, this traditional, above the line, very in your home marketing versus this very new age way of dealing with marketing in Google. I mean, the height of tech Silicon Valley.
So I think humility and curiosity always win the day. remaining teachable is a superpower. Because you don't walk around thinking that you have all the answers. You can't think as a marketing person who's a custodian of consumer insights that you know it all.
Yeah.
Because that's when you start to become irrelevant. I mean, you can't even think that you know the latest Amapiano song to put in an ad because they change. Even dance moves change. Even jokes and slang change. So constantly learning and being curious, I think, is important. Understanding that the ability to listen is important. So if I look at my career trajectory, as you rightly said, it's been quite intentional. But I can't take the glory for all of that. I've had mentors, I've had coaches. This road is too long to walk alone. So I say in my book, have a wingmate. I wrote a book called Servings of Self-Mastery.
Yes.
And the idea there is that to help people remember that they can only control themselves. Everything else is about influencing, variables. And sometimes, you can't change the variables. It's like the weather. It listens to no criticism.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you say about it.
It decides what to do.
The only thing you can do about bad weather is improve
prepare
your
for it,
clothing.
yeah.
Right? Exactly. So Unilever was a great place. I love the products. I love the marketing ethic. I love the fact that marketing truly led the organization's thinking, because if it's about organizing an organization in service of the end consumer, then marketing has to play a really, really important part of value creation, of bringing insights, using technology and tools to create a single source of truth for everybody to galvanize around, but also measuring performance and creating a sense of, are we creating value here? And also understanding how the business model needs to evolve so that, you disrupt yourself before you disrupt it. And then fast forward to companies like SAB, where I worked, which was a great pioneering African company that became a global success. And the work ethic and the focus on operational excellence and great sales and great products and impact in society. And if you look at companies like Cadbury, where I also worked, where it was about how do we generate happiness out of a mundane existence? How do you create a sense of euphoria and just products that people love, lift the mood. Getting into advertising, that for me was about transitioning from being a generalist into a specialist. Because we like to speak about in leadership practice about being a T-shaped individual. As important as it is to have depth and specialisms, it's also important to be like a bird and have a wide wingspan, right? And the wingspan is important for balance and for agility. But I also think that a strong river is both deep and wide. So just widening the aperture so that you've got this multiplicity of exposure and interest makes you quite versatile. But also, if your life purpose, like I said, is to make a difference in society, you must make it your business to have a diverse perspective and to understand a little bit about everything, be interested in being interesting, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
And the value for me is interesting because from a marketing point of view, especially with us who work in the influencer marketing space as content creators, as influencers, that value seems to be the most elusive part of our day-to-day, trying to understand that, yes, in the creation of these experiences and being intentional about what you put out into the world, that we also bring the value. For me, the great question would be what you observed over your career, especially understanding the traditional marketing and the traditional tools of marketing. I made the example earlier that, when our parents spoke about Lindy, we're from marketing. We didn't think about a trendy young person who's in the know with AirPods and knows the latest Amapiano song. We saw this drab lady who can keep reminding you about budget, and the best we can do is put an ad in the classifieds. How are you seeing the value change, especially having worked again in this big tech and big and these very traditionally linked organizations like
So the
Unilever?
power of technology has been to democratize access to information. Information is empowering. If you look at the end user, the customer, the consumer today, they are much more empowered, much more discerning. They vote with their feet, and they're very demanding, and they're very judgmental, and they can be unforgiving. So marketers have no choice but to ensure that they understand what value looks like to the end user and the customer. We live in a world where you can't rely on cookies anymore to find people on the internet. We live in a privacy-safe marketing environment where you must ask for permission. A consumer only gives you permission and access to their details if they see value, if they see a value exchange, and they insist on a symmetry of power. They're not interested in asymmetries anymore, where the marketer determines and dictates. And in fact, consumers today can come up with content on your behalf.
Yes.
They write the advertising script for our brands. If you get something wrong, they amplify and broadcast your mistakes. If you do something good, they give you flowers.
The same.
So marketers no longer have ultimate control and unfettered control over content creation, as we know. So I think the power balance has shifted in such a way that consumers are now actually powerful, and they want to get into a negotiation with brands that are about, do you understand who I am? If I'm a Gen Z, I'm 40% of the buying power in the world. And if I insist on brands that respect values, brands that care about sustainability in the world, that's table stakes for me. That's what I demand from everyone. Now, as a marketer, how do you ensure that sustainability is embedded in your thinking? How do you ensure that you're thinking of the triple bottom line all the time as a marketer? What needs to happen to your perspective for you to be thinking that less is more, to be thinking that it is in giving that we're receiving? So giving value all the time, this thing called freemium, being kind of the next thing, is really important. It's not about just getting and getting and getting. It's about adding value to people's lives, and they'll reward you with advocacy. That's why marketers today talk about lead generation should be driven by advocates, not just the marketer.
Yes.
But if you want your advocates to generate leads for you, you better serve them. So a service culture, I think, is what's needed in marketing.
Are we not losing a lot of the philosophy that you extrapolate now, in the fact that because of how so much of the marketing world requires numbers for us to be able to justify our existence for a very long time, it has become embedded in us for us to push in and say this is what we can do without being very intentional about what we require of the content creators, of the advocates, because your content creators do become your advocates to their audiences.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in your view about how we then plug in the holes of not losing the consumer, because consumer is not complicated. The consumer is there, has always been there, and how we talk to them is what has evolved. What they expect of us has evolved. So chat to me about how we then move forward from just speaking at them and becoming the people who dictate the conversation to being more relaxed to receive the information from them, but still being very brand authentic. Because if everyone sat back and receive information from the consumer, the consumer sometimes doesn't know what's best for us as the marketers and the brand, and what we're trying to relate to them. How do we strike that balance?
Absolutely. So when I was a young brand manager, we didn't have digital marketing. We also didn't have data as a thing to play with. All we had was consumer research. So we would do focus groups, or we would do big quantitative studies. We used to call them habits and usage studies. And those were useful at the time. But we realized that actually with technology, you're now able to scale and you're able to get big data and crunch the data. Now, a lot of organizations still suffer from silo mentalities, right? And with silos comes individual data lakes that aren't always integrated. But with big tech and with great cloud computing capability, you're able to analyze this data very quickly, get great insights out of it, and get a single source of truth, and be able to extract value-creating insights that the organization can use to drive innovation. Now, that takes investment in the right MarTech solutions. So the first thing is get the right tools. Now, it's difficult because the tools keep evolving every day. So the first thing that a marketer needs to be good at is understanding marketing technology and its infinite possibilities. The second thing is about developing a strong relationship with data and analytics and scientific rigor, and not just thinking about creativity and philosophy, and all those things are important. But marketing today requires us to be as scientific as we are creative. And both actually live together, right? So understanding that data has a role to play, and magic can come out of data, but also understanding that data scientists might be people that love the things that you might hate as a marketer.
Yes.
How do you ensure that your marketing team has data scientists in them? How do you ensure that your advertising agency team has data scientists in them? So diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just about bringing the right people, bringing everybody to the party and serving them the right food according to their tastes and preferences. It's also about changing the makeup of our organizations from a skill set perspective. Customer experience requires humility of us, because oftentimes the ego gets in the way, and we feel like a doormat. We feel like, oh, thankless consumers. We feel like, oh my goodness, why must they be like this? Why must they be so mean and so harsh on social media? All we did was make a mistake. Can you be more forgiving? Don't tell the whole world that we got something wrong.
Come back, let me have a chat
Come
about
back,
it.
let's have a chat. Your ego gets in the way as a human being. Self-mastery is about understand that the ego is your enemy, but self-esteem is your friend.
I'm loving the fact that apart from the insights that we can definitely, shameless plug, get the book, okay, Servings of Self-Mastery by Dr. Alistair Mokoena, it's also the understanding that there has to be a balance and intentionality, even from the content creators. Because I was smiling when you were saying that, because I was hearing it from a content creator's point of view, that you must know what you're talking about, you must know the data that you're dealing with, know the technology point that you are, so you're able to be authentic as much as the marketer. Because when the end user sees the messaging, you and the brand manager and the brand custodian and the brand are one, are coming from the same side and you speak
Exactly.
the same direction. It has been an insight, and
you.
I can't wait to see what comes of the next PhD. Please share it with us, and I will not
Will
hold your
do.
rodentship against you.
Will do. Will do. Will
Dr.
do.
Alistair Mokoena chatting to us about everything, including his wonderful book. Go out there and get it. It's called Servants of Self Mastery. When we come back, more interesting conversations with the best marketers in the country. Stay tuned.